The year is 1172. In the heart of Aquitaine, Queen Eleanor held court in Poitiers. Though estranged from her husband, King Henry II, she ruled her territories with an iron fist and a keen mind. Her court, however, was becoming a dangerous place. A grand feast was underway, a celebration of the Queen's continued reign. Nobles from across Aquitaine gathered to pay homage, to feast, and to engage in the intricate dance of courtly politics. Among the throng, Lord Geoffrey, a shrewd adviser to the Queen, moved with calculated grace. He saw opportunity in every interaction, every whispered conversation a potential advantage. Jean de Foix, the Queen's taster, performed his duty with unwavering vigilance. He tasted every dish, every goblet of wine, ensuring it was safe for his Queen. His life was one of constant watchfulness, a silent guardian against unseen threats. Queen Eleanor observed Jean, her blue eyes sharp and assessing. She trusted him, yet in these treacherous times trust was a fragile thing. Suddenly, chaos erupted. Lord Armand, a prominent nobleman and a political rival of the Queen, clutched at his chest. His face contorted in agony and collapsed to the floor. Father Mitchell, the Queen's confessor, rushed to the nobleman's side, offering last rites. But even in his prayerful ministrations, a flicker of unease crossed his face. Whispers began to circulate like a poisonous draught through the court. All eyes turned to Jean de Foix, the man who had tasted the Lord's food and drink. Suspicion, once a mere shadow, now solidified into a tangible accusation. Lord Geoffrey, ever the opportunist, watched the unfolding drama with a keen interest. The chaos served his purposes, and he knew how to manipulate it to his advantage. Father Mitchell retreated to the Queen's private chapel, seeking solace in prayer. He had witnessed too many sudden deaths in recent months, each shrouded in unsettling circumstances. A pattern was emerging, one that chilled him to the bone. Jean knew he was in danger. The Queen's favor was fickle, and the whispers of poison had a way of becoming self-fulfilling prophecies. He had to clear his name, but to do so, he would have to uncover the truth behind Lord Armand's death. Unbeknownst to Jean, Lord Geoffrey was already weaving his web, subtly poisoning the Queen's mind against her loyal taster. The game of power had begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. Fear coiled through the court of Eleanor of Aquitaine, a serpent whispering of poison and treachery. The death of Lord Thibault, ostensibly from a fever, had cast a long shadow, fueling rumors that spread like wildfire through the castle's echoing halls. Jean de Foix, the Queen's taster, felt the weight of suspicion settle upon him. He moved through the castle like a ghost, his senses heightened, alert for any sign of danger. He began his own discreet investigation, seeking answers where others feared to tread. He focused on the details of Lord Thibault's final meal. He learned that a batch of figs, sourced from a new vendor outside the monastery, was served that evening, a detail that was not initially recorded. Why? Father Mitchell, the Queen's confessor, paced the gardens, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. The deaths were becoming too frequent, too convenient. The pattern was undeniable. Those who challenged Eleanor's authority, or who had simply fallen out of favor, were now lying cold in their graves. He sought an audience with the Queen. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "I fear there is a darkness growing in this court. The deaths, they are not mere coincidence." Eleanor listened, her face a mask of regal composure. She was not a woman easily swayed by fear or superstition, but Father Mitchell's words struck a chord of unease within her. "You speak of poison, Mitchell. Do you have proof, Or are you simply succumbing to the whispers of fearful women? Lord Geoffrey, ever the opportunist, saw the growing unease as a chance to advance his own agenda. He subtly guided Alina's fears, pointing fingers at his political rivals, whispering doubts about their loyalty and ambition. He wanted to consolidate his power. But Geoffrey's ambitions ran deeper than mere influence. In the shadowed depths of the castle wine cellar, he met with a cloaked figure, their conversation hushed and furtive. Secrets were exchanged, alliances forged in the darkness, and a dangerous game was set in motion. Unbeknownst to Geoffrey, Jean de Foix had been watching him. He had noticed the advisor's increased activity, his whispered conversations, and his too smooth reassurances to the Queen. His suspicions were growing with each passing day. Jean knew he had to act quickly. The court was a viper's nest, and he was walking a tightrope, one wrong step away from falling into the abyss. He needed proof, undeniable evidence that would expose the true poisoner and clear his own name. Meanwhile, Father Mitchell wrestled with his conscience. He had heard whispers, seen furtive glances, and sensed the growing tension within the court. He knew that revealing what he suspected could shatter the Queen's reign and plunge Aquitaine into chaos. But could he remain silent while innocent lives were being taken? Queen Alina, though outwardly composed, felt the foundations of her court trembling. She was surrounded by ambition and deceit, and she knew that the poison that plagued her court was more than just a physical threat. It was a poison of the soul, a corruption that threatened to consume everything she had built. Father Mitchell wrestled with his conscience. The deaths at court, once dismissed as unfortunate accidents, now formed a chilling pattern. His loyalty to Queen Alina warred with his duty to God. Could he stand idly by while poison took root within the very heart of her court? To accuse the Queen directly was unthinkable. Yet, the alternative, allowing the poisoner to continue their dark work, was equally unbearable. He needed proof, irrefutable evidence that would force Alina to confront the darkness within her court. Driven by a sense of urgency, Father Mitchell decided to continue his discreet investigation. He began to explore the less frequented parts of the castle, seeking any clue that might shed light on the poisonings. Behind a loose tapestry in a forgotten corner of the castle, he found it, a hidden alcove. Shelves lined with vials of murky liquids and jars of dried herbs, their pungent aroma a stark contrast to the castle's usual scents. Meanwhile, Jean, desperate to clear his name, continued his own search. He knew the kitchens intimately, every nook and cranny. It was in their depths that he believed the truth lay hidden. Pressing against a seemingly ordinary stone in the wall, Jean felt it give way. A section of the wall slid inward, revealing a narrow, dark passage, a secret route, unknown to most. Unbeknownst to Jean, Lord Geoffrey had been watching him. The advisor's ambitions were as boundless as his cruelty, and he saw Jean's investigation as a threat to his own plans. Back in the hidden alcove, Father Mitchell recognized some of the herbs. Deadly nightshade, henbane, monkshood, all potent poisons. The presence of these ingredients confirmed his worst fears. Torch in hand, Jean cautiously ventured into the secret passage. The air was damp and musty, the silence broken only by the echo of his footsteps. The passage led to a small storage room, conveniently located near the Queen's private chambers. The implications were chilling. Unbeknownst to Queen Alina, as she took a sip from her goblet, the shadow of suspicion had crept closer, threatening to engulf not only her court but her very life. Lord Geoffrey, ever the puppeteer, met with his accomplice under the cover of darkness. The game was afoot, and he was determined to win, no matter the cost. The morning in Poitiers broke with deceptive tranquility. Queen Eleanor held court, dispensing judgments and receiving ambassadors, while a darker drama unfolded in the shadows. Jean, ever vigilant, scrutinized the Queen's breakfast service, his senses on high alert. The death of Lady Isabel, a lady-in-waiting with loose lips, cast a pall over the court. Father Mitchell sought solace in prayer, his heart heavy with the weight of secrets and suspicions. Lady Isabel had confessed something to him before her untimely demise, something that pointed to a conspiracy within the court. Driven by a desperate need to clear his name, Jean retraced Lady Isabel's last known steps in the Queen's rose garden. The air, usually a balm to the soul, now felt thick with menace. Beneath the thorny embrace of a rose bush he found it, a discarded glove, embroidered with a crest he didn't recognize. A faint, bitter almond scent clung to the fabric, the telltale sign of cyanide. Unbeknownst to Jean, Lord Geoffrey watched from a distance, his gaze predatory. The advisor saw in Jean's predicament an opportunity to solidify his own power. Geoffrey approached Jean, his voice smooth with false concern. "De foi," he began, "I've heard whispers unfounded, I assure you, but whispers nonetheless, whispers that implicate you." Jean listened, his guard raised. He knew Geoffrey's offer of protection came with a price: information, loyalty, and ultimately control. "Tell me what you know, de foi," Geoffrey pressed, his voice laced with a subtle threat. "Tell me who else is involved, and I can ensure your safety, and perhaps even your future." Meanwhile, Father Mitchell sought an audience with the Queen, his conscience demanding he reveal what Lady Isabel had confided in him. The safety of Eleanor and the integrity of the court were at stake. Eleanor listened, her piercing blue eyes narrowing as Father Mitchell spoke of conspiracy and betrayal. She had always known her court was a viper's nest, but the venom now seemed to be spreading with alarming speed. Jean, refusing to be a pawn in Geoffrey's game, made his decision. He would find the true poisoner, expose the conspiracy, and protect the Queen, even if it meant risking his own life. Jean moved like a shadow himself, driven by a growing desperation. The noose of suspicion tightened daily, and time was running out. He needed to confide in Father Mitchell, the one person he trusted implicitly. The monastery garden offered a semblance of peace, a sanctuary from the poisonous intrigue of the court. Father Mitchell prayed for guidance, his heart heavy with the weight of the secrets he carried. "The poison," Jean whispered, his voice strained. "It always leaves a trace of wolfsbane. I've detected it in the wine of Lord Thibault and in the broth served to Lady Anise. Wolfsbane, a potent substance, difficult to trace. Someone with knowledge of herbs and access to the Queen's kitchen could easily administer it." The envoy spoke of alliances and trade, but Eleanor saw the veiled threat beneath the surface. Her estranged husband's enemies circled like vultures, sensing weakness. "Your Majesty," Geoffrey murmured, his voice dripping with false concern, "I fear the loyalty of some within your court is questionable. The royal taster Jean de Foix has been seen in clandestine meetings, and his movements are unsettling." Eleanor's gaze hardened. She had always trusted Jean, but Geoffrey's words planted a seed of doubt. Trust was a luxury she could ill afford. The wine was clean, free of any trace of poison. Yet Jean couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of eyes scrutinizing his every move. The court had become a spider's web, and he was caught in its silken threads. Geoffrey savored his victory. He had successfully turned the Queen against Jean. Now, All that remained was to tighten the noose and claim the power that was rightfully his. Elinor felt the weight of her crown, the isolation of power. Whom could she trust? The shadows of suspicion had crept into her very heart, poisoning her peace of mind. Father Mitchell prayed for guidance, for the strength to do what was right, even if it meant defying his queen. He was bound by his vows, but his conscience demanded he seek the truth, no matter the cost. Jean de Foix, one of the guards announced, his voice devoid of emotion. By order of Queen Elinor, you are hereby placed under arrest for suspicion of treason and attempted poisoning. The accusation hung in the air like a poisoned dart. Treason. Lord Geoffrey had presented his case with practiced precision, weaving a tapestry of circumstantial evidence that painted Jean de Foix as a master of deceit and death. Queen Elinor listened, her face a mask of regal composure, betraying nothing of her thoughts. Jean stood accused, the weight of the court's gaze pressing down on him. He scanned the faces before him, seeking a flicker of doubt, a spark of belief in his innocence. But he saw only suspicion and fear, reflected in the eyes of those he had sworn to protect. Lord Geoffrey basked in the drama, his voice dripping with righteous indignation as he presented the evidence. Each word was a calculated blow, designed to solidify Jean's guilt in the eyes of the Queen and the court. He was a spider, patiently weaving his web. The Queen spoke, her voice resonating with the power of her position. Jean de Foix, you are hereby stripped of your title and imprisoned in the dungeons, pending further investigation. The words echoed through the hall, sealing Jean's fate. As the guards dragged him away, Jean locked eyes with Father Mitchell. In that fleeting moment he conveyed a silent message, a desperate plea for help, a glimmer of hope in the face of despair. He subtly scratched a symbol onto the stone floor. Father Mitchell watched Jean's departure with a heavy heart. He saw the silent message, the desperation in his eyes. He knew he had to act, to uncover the truth before it was too late. The church demanded justice, but his loyalty to Elinor and his faith in Jean urged him forward. Under the guise of prayer, Father Mitchell knelt, his fingers tracing the symbol Jean had scratched into the stone. It was a mark he recognized, a sign used by apothecaries to denote specific poisons. Under the cloak of night, Father Mitchell left the castle, seeking the expertise of a trusted apothecary in a nearby village. He needed to know the specific poison used, to understand its source and its effects. The apothecary, a wizened old man with a lifetime of knowledge of herbs and poisons, examined the vial with meticulous care. The air was thick with the scent of dried leaves and exotic ingredients. This, he declared, is derived from belladonna but mixed with something else to conceal its flavor. The apothecary continued, the additional component is nightshade, but processed in a way to remove its bitterness. This means whoever prepared this is not only skilled but has access to advanced alchemical knowledge, and the delayed reaction most peculiar. Deep in the castle dungeons, Jean languished, his mind racing, piecing together the fragments of the conspiracy. He knew he was running out of time, and that his only hope lay in Father Mitchell's investigation. Armed with the knowledge of the poison, Father Mitchell returned to the court, determined to expose the truth. The conspiracy was deeper and more dangerous than he had imagined, reaching into the darkest corners of the Queen's court. The hunt for the poisoner had just begun. Driven by a desperate need for answers, Father Mitchell sought the counsel of Brother Thomas, the monastery's apothecary. The fate of Jean, and perhaps the Queen herself, might hinge on what the apothecary could reveal. The air in the apothecary was thick with the scent of dried herbs and strange concoctions. Father Mitchell presented the sample he had managed to retrieve, a residue from Lord Thibault's goblet, to the apothecary, his heart pounding with anticipation. "This is no common poison, Father," Brother Thomas declared, his voice low and serious. "This is aconitum prepared in a very specific manner, rendering it almost untraceable. It is potent, and its effects are unsettling." Aconitum, also known as monkshood or wolfsbane, was a deadly plant, its roots and leaves containing a potent neurotoxin. In skilled hands, it could be administered in minute doses, causing paralysis, cardiac arrest, and death. "But how did it come to be at court?" Father Mitchell asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Who would possess such knowledge and malice?" Brother Thomas traced a line of text in the ancient herbal. "The recipe for this particular preparation," he whispered, "is known only to a few and guarded fiercely. It is favored by the enemies of the crown, the House of Toulouse." In the castle, Jean awaited his fate. The evidence, though circumstantial, was damning. Lord Geoffrey had painted him as a traitor, a poisoner in the Queen's own service. Hope dwindled with each passing hour. Lord Geoffrey surveyed the map of Aquitaine, a predatory gleam in his eyes. With Jean discredited and likely to be executed, the path to power was opening before him. He could taste the victory, the control he craved so deeply. Queen Elena wrestled with her own doubts. She needed stability for her territories. Could she trust Jean? Was he truly capable of such betrayal, or was he a pawn in a larger game? "There is an antidote, Father," Brother Thomas said, handing him a small vial. "But it must be administered quickly. Go save the Queen's taster, for the true danger is far from over." Unbeknownst to the court, Lord Geoffrey, emboldened by his perceived success, was already planning his next move. He was meeting with his allies, setting the stage for his rise to power, fully expecting Jean's execution to be swift and decisive. Time was running out. Father Mitchell knew he had to reach Queen Elena and Jean before it was too late, before Lord Geoffrey's treachery consumed them all. He raced against the tide of courtly intrigue, a lone figure carrying the hope of truth and justice. The cold stone of the cell offered little comfort. Jean knew he couldn't languish here, waiting for Geoffrey to tighten the noose. He had to escape, to find the truth before it was too late. A sympathetic face appeared in the gloom. A guard, a man Jean had shared a few words with, a man seemingly burdened by the injustice unfolding. He held the key, a silent promise of freedom. Freedom tasted like fear. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of fabric threatened to expose him. He moved like a phantom, driven by a singular purpose. Geoffrey, secure in his machinations, worked late into the night. He believed his victory was assured, his ascent to power inevitable. Jean burst into the study, disrupting Geoffrey's carefully constructed world. The time for shadows was over. The truth demanded its due. Geoffrey's composure crumbled. His carefully constructed facade of innocence cracked under the weight of Jean's accusations. The evidence was undeniable. Vials of poison, carefully catalogued and hidden, the ledger a testament to his meticulous plotting. Geoffrey's ambition had poisoned not only the court but his very soul. Father Mitchell, burdened by his discoveries, sought an audience with the Queen. He knew the truth he carried would be a bitter pill to swallow. Elena, a woman of iron will, found it difficult to believe that Geoffrey, her trusted adviser, could be capable of such treachery. The very idea challenged her judgment, her authority. "Enough," Elena declared, her voice ringing with authority. Geoffrey has served me loyally. I will not entertain these baseless accusations." Mitchell, defeated but undeterred, knew he had planted a seed of doubt. He could only pray that it would take root before it was too late. Despite her outward show of confidence, Eleanor could not entirely dismiss Mitchell's words. A shadow of doubt had fallen upon Geoffrey, a shadow that threatened to engulf her entire court. Queen Eleanor, her suspicions confirmed by Jean's daring escape and Father Mitchell's revelations, decided to bait the serpent. She would announce a feast, ostensibly to celebrate a recent alliance, but in reality to expose the poisoner in her midst. Jean, having evaded capture, met with Father Mitchell at the monastery. Brother Thomas, the apothecary, had been working tirelessly to analyze the poison and concoct an antidote. They needed to act quickly. The Queen's plan was fraught with peril. Father Mitchell, using his influence within the church and the court, sought to rally support for Jean and the Queen. He spoke to those he trusted, revealing the evidence he had gathered and warning them of Geoffrey's treachery. Unaware of the Queen's plan, Lord Geoffrey reveled in his perceived victory. He oversaw the preparations for the feast, ensuring his own agents were in place to complete the final act of their conspiracy. The night of the feast arrived. Queen Eleanor entered the banquet hall, her presence commanding the attention of everyone present. She moved with grace and power, a queen determined to reclaim her court. Jean, disguised as a serving boy, moved amongst the guests, his eyes fixed on Lord Geoffrey. He knew the poisoner would make their move soon, and he had to be ready to expose them. Lord Geoffrey, seizing the moment, raised his glass in a toast to the Queen. It was a calculated move, a signal to his co-conspirators that the time had come. But Queen Eleanor, anticipating his move, interrupted his toast. She seized the glass from his hand, her eyes burning into his. "I believe," she announced, her voice ringing through the hall, "that this wine requires a closer examination." At that moment Jean stepped forward, throwing off his disguise. "That wine is poisoned," he declared, his voice clear and strong. "And Lord Geoffrey is the one who orchestrated it." The Queen's guards moved swiftly, seizing Lord Geoffrey before he could react. His face, once composed and confident, was now a mask of fury and desperation. Father Mitchell then presented the evidence he had gathered, including a confession from one of Geoffrey's accomplices, revealing the full extent of the conspiracy. The plot reached far beyond simple poisoning. It was a calculated attempt to destabilize Eleanor's reign and seize control of her territories. Queen Eleanor, her reign secured, addressed the court. She vowed to root out all corruption and ensure that justice was served. The shadow of poison had been lifted, but the memory of treachery would forever serve as a reminder of the price of power. The feast hall was silent, every eye on Queen Eleanor. The air crackled with tension, thicker than the smoke from the hearth fires. Tonight the truth would be served not on a silver platter, but on the sharp edge of justice. Jean stood as a symbol of the Queen's mercy, his presence a calculated move to unsettle the guilty. Geoffrey, ever the master of appearances, maintained his composure, but Jean could see the flicker of unease in his eyes. "Lord Geoffrey," Eleanor's voice cut through the silence, "you have served me well, or so I believed. Present now the evidence you have gathered on the poisonings and on the betrayals within my court." Geoffrey presented his case, skillfully twisting facts and half-truths to paint Jean as the sole perpetrator. He produced forged documents, pointed to Jean's access to the Queen's food, and whispered of motives born of jealousy and ambition. But before the Queen could pronounce judgment, Father Mitchell stepped forward. In his trembling hands, he held a vial containing the very poison that had claimed so many lives. This poison, Your Majesty, did not come from Jean de Foix. Father Mitchell explained how he had pieced together the truth, uncovering Geoffrey's network of spies and his secret dealings with rival nobles. He revealed Geoffrey's ambition to seize power and destabilize Alina's reign. Jean, now vindicated, revealed the final piece of the puzzle, a hidden compartment in Geoffrey's desk containing a ledger detailing the poisonings, the intended victims, and the payments made to Geoffrey by his co-conspirators. Geoffrey, his carefully constructed facade crumbling, was dragged away, protesting his innocence to deaf ears. The evidence was irrefutable, his treachery laid bare for all to see. Alina addressed the court, her voice filled with a mix of anger and relief. She vowed to root out the remaining conspirators and restore order to her realm. The poison had been exposed, but the wounds it inflicted would take time to heal. Jean received the Queen's gratitude, his name cleared and his honor restored. He had faced the shadow of suspicion and emerged victorious, proving his loyalty and uncovering the truth. Father Mitchell knelt in the chapel, giving thanks for the deliverance of the Queen and her court. He had wrestled with his conscience and found a way to serve both God and his Queen, though the burden of the secrets he now carried weighed heavily on his soul. As the sun set over Aquitaine, Alina knew that the events of the past weeks would forever change her court. New alliances had been forged, old loyalties tested, and the true cost of power laid bare. The shadow of the silver goblet had been lifted, but the poison of ambition lingered, waiting for its next opportunity to strike.